Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to this weekly conversation about laws, in-house legal practice. Today, I have a very timely conversation with my friend Helen Yoon. I'll let Helen introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Helen Yoon. I'm Assistant General Counsel for North America at Brink Incorporated. I'm also a mom and a spouse and a small business owner.
Tell me more about, Helen, kind of what you do daily as an in-house lawyer, and I guess as a mom and as a business owner.
I've been practicing law for 20 years. I've been in-house for pretty much that entire time. I didn't go the traditional, big law path. I do lots of commercial contracts and everything else that a small legal department does. And in my free time, I help with our family small business, which is an art studio, and help my husband raise our 9-year-old boy.
How did you come to your first legal job?
After law school, I had convinced myself that I wanted to do health law. My law school had a very good health law program, and they had started this health law fellowship at the state senate. I did the health law thing, and the program wasn't really well developed. And so I felt kind of a little bit like I'm kind of treading in sand here. And so I started looking to other areas of law, and being from Texas and being from Houston, energy was a big thing. And so I ended up at an electric utility, and that's how I started my in-house career.
It's a difficult time, and it's a difficult time, I think, to be an Asian American, given what's going on in the world. What are your thoughts on this?
It's all the emotions, sadness and anger and kind of what do we do? For myself personally, seeing all the news reports, it's terrifying, especially for, I feel like I could probably take care of myself. I don't know. But if perhaps my mother was the victim of something like that, that scares me. I've also been very lucky that I haven't really experienced that myself or witnessed it. So it's difficult.
I'm with you. It's really difficult to talk about it, and it's difficult to comprehend that we are in the midst of it. I guess as a person who probably a little bit more personal, how do you cope with something like this? What has helped you?
Hearing personal accounts of people that experience this. My heart goes out to them. It's also helpful that friends, colleagues, neighbors that are allies have reached out to me and said, I just want to check on you. How are you? We just want to make sure you're okay. And you always have an ally in me. So, that's everything to me, my community.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people reaching out on social media and being supportive and openly making statements was not acceptable today.
Yeah.
And I definitely find it encouraging. For those of us who, maybe not Asian American, but really want to be supportive, anything else we can do to support our, Asian American colleagues and frankly, get away from this, away from this experience that I think is really unfortunate at this time.
Yeah, showing support, however way you feel comfortable doing that is good. But also, I think the more or the less bystanders we have, if you see something happening or you hear someone saying something inappropriate or, seeing an act of violence, like doing something about it, calling people out for that and taking action. And, that's really the best way to help, to say, hey, that's not okay. Don't say that or don't do that or, call the police or whatever it may be, is just not just standing by and doing that whole bystander effect and doing nothing, is saying something, taking an action.
The other conversation I just had with my colleagues, you can view some of it as direct race related, but you can view it as gender related. What are your thoughts here?
I'm not really sure what to do with that in terms of how gender affects it. Maybe it's the stereotypes. So words matter.
Words matter. Sometimes it's really hard to separate
Yeah.
our our unconscious biases come in a bundle. Let's talk about unconscious biases because we've had a pretty good conversation in the past about it. I'm just curious how you think of it, how you experience it.
As a woman, I think most women in corporate America, in the workplace, have probably experienced some unconscious bias, whether it's being described as too aggressive or bossy or even the B word. And because there's that stereotype of a woman should be nurturing and caring and kind and motherly. And so I think if you're too outspoken, you don't really fit that mold. And so, it's kind of a disconnect. And so for me, I've experienced that. But you layer on top of that for me, being an Asian woman, being Asian and a woman, you get the kind of the double stereotype of the submissive Asian woman. You should be the China doll. And if you're not, if you're outspoken, if you're what they say is aggressive or bossy, then you're the dragon lady. So, it's kind of a lose-lose situation for us sometimes.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to reconcile the female expectation from a lawyer expectation because those really conflict head on. And now as a CEO, I think it's even more something that I experience because there is a sort of expectation for Olga as a woman, and there is an expectation for Olga as a lawyer, and sometimes it feels like it's a very little overlap if you think about Venn diagram, and I think it does have impact on women professionals. What do you think?
I'm so glad you went there because as a lawyer, it's such a mixed message because in the courtroom, in the boardroom, at the negotiation table, they want you to be aggressive. They want you to be direct. And that's what they want. They want you to be confident. But perhaps maybe behind closed doors, those adjectives, those are not good things for you in your career. If you're too direct or overconfident or aggressive, that means you're unlikable, unapproachable. And I think, that's nobody wants to be unlikable. Everyone wants to be liked. So it's definitely a mixed message for attorneys, female attorneys. Which one is it? Two faces.
Yeah. Finding this pushy, aggressive enough, but not so pushy that they don't like you.
Yeah.
It's a very, very small real estate to find.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. And I think it's kind of a lot of energy that goes into thinking, how do I find that perfect point? And I think it does wear on you. And actually, do you think it could affect, self-esteem or even maybe lead to kind of more psychological anxiety issues?
I definitely, personally, it did affect my self-esteem. And I think it's, especially when you're a young lawyer, when you're a young professional and you want to put your head down and you're in the learning phase and you want to learn as much as possible about your craft, whether it's being a lawyer or, an accountant or whatever that may be. And at the same time trying to understand and learn how to navigate, company politics or, how to present yourselves to executives and all of those things. And then when you get that kind of feedback, one, that maybe you're unapproachable or unlikable, I think when you're younger, you take it as gospel. You don't really question it. And I found for myself, as I got older, I did start to question it. I didn't say, okay, well, so what's wrong with being confident? what's wrong with being direct? That's kind of what's expected of me as a lawyer. You don't want a lawyer going in there kind of going all over the place. They want you to get to the point. And so the mixed message, I think it's really difficult, and it does affect your self-esteem. Like, oh, is there something wrong with me? Is there not? Am I a good lawyer? Am I not?
Yeah, and what is that trade-off between being a mother and a woman and a human? That definitely. But I definitely, when I was I guess young, I don't necessarily want to emphasize my age, but I guess when I was a more junior lawyer and a more junior human being, and definitely kind of finding that balance was top of mind. What top of mind where I'm in the middle of my career is when I show up to conversation, I'm a little worried that I have so many scars that I show up with the baggage. Mm-hmm. And that now I anticipate where people will take, and I think I know what they want and how that conflict plays out. And, when you have so many scars and you show up with the baggage, there is a chance that you actually influence the course of the conversation, and that affects your interactions with others. So, a kind of more difficult question, even kind of as you progress through your career, how do you continue showing up to conversations and experiences with open mind, even though you have many scars and calluses around that experience of, lawyering under being a woman?
I think we find ourselves editing, what we want to say a lot more. We, like you said, it's like a small real estate that you can find that kind of spot. And so we're always walking the tightrope. I posted this article yesterday on my LinkedIn. It was about why Asian American women are having trouble getting to senior leadership positions or something like that. And it really angered me because the conclusion or the solution that was offered was, you need to just get better at impression management, which is managing other people's impression of you.
Let's pause here for a second.
Yeah.
It's managing impressions of others. Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So, I think as lawyers, as professionals, our jobs are hard enough as it is. But as a woman, maybe as an Asian woman, we have that added thing of we have to now manage other people's impressions of us. And, I've seen that with so many women, colleagues and elsewhere that say maybe after a meeting come up and ask me, do you think that was okay what I said? Did it come across too harsh or too aggressive? And I have to tell them, no, you have to go for it. And, and then in the back of my mind, I think, do men come up to each other and say, hey, do you think that was too aggressive of me? I don't think so. I don't think that's really happening.
I don't think it's a real conversation. And if you have to manage others' view of you, I mean, it's difficult to manage yourself, and that's the only person that you can possibly manage successfully. Yeah. Those of us who can master the art of self-management, I think, kind of get further in life. Now, the part where you kind of control others, I don't know. That's unlikely. I think the only person you can master to manage is yourself. So that's a very interesting conclusion of the article. Yeah. What is if you could rewrite the article, what different advice would you give based on your experiences?
Kind of jumping to the conclusion of kind of where I wanted to end today with you, which is, you have to be yourself. Like you said, how do you effectively manage someone else's impression of you, without being your true self? It's almost impossible, I think, and it's exhausting for us to have to do that every day. And then question, oh gosh, the way I said that, was that too harsh? Every single time you say something or write an email, and you have to be yourself. I want to tell a story. Maybe I'll save it for the end of, this whole be yourself thing. I don't know. I'm going to wait and see.
No, I would love to hear it. Before you do, what helped me was sort of overthinking whether I am too aggressive or too friendly or not so friendly. I use Grammarly, and Grammarly sends me a weekly report about objective report, not the one I produce in my head or overthink, that gives me kind of various humanly parameters on friendliness, assertiveness, and being neutral, being passive aggressive, and actually kind of tells me that like you're 3% more friendly, 2% more aggressive. It's actually kind of interesting because I get this report at the end of the week, and then I reflect on my week, so when I find myself asking, is this too much or too little, what I usually end up saying, okay, we're going to see it in the report. There's going to be a more objective data that tell me how I showed up in my conversations today. And I find it very interesting to kind of see how my reports have data, objective data. Mm-hmm. Olga the human, not Olga the woman, not Olga the woman lawyer, not Olga the woman CEO, correlates with what happens to me that week. Mm. You learn more from that experience of matching, objective data to objective things that are happening. And you learn a lot about kind of how you react on the spot. But because I think it's useful to in knowing yourself, to actually know how you respond. But because I'm a little worried that now I overthink, I don't trust myself to be that data producer about Olga. And so that Grammarly report, because it actually goes through my emails and my writing and measures my tone, essentially, I find it to be a very useful objective data to analyze at the end of the week. But yes, tell me the story.
I hope everyone's as lucky to have a boss or mentor or sponsor that gives you this message, which is, let me tell you the story. A former GC of mine, we were working on something, and, we kind of had to talk to a business person about kind of the correct way to approach something, or I forget the specific issue, but I wrote out this email, drafted it, really thought hard about, impression management, and I don't want to come across as too harsh or, mean or unapproachable. But I needed to get the point across. So I drafted an email and I sent it to my boss, and I said, do you think that was okay? Was it too harsh? What is it okay? Is it okay for me to send this? I wanted to get his permission. And he said to me, Helen, you do you. You have one of your great qualities is being able to read the room. So just you do you. And having someone say that to you is very empowering. It's comforting and everything else. And so I hope that everyone can have that, someone that's got your back, even if you're doing you and being yourself.
Yeah, that's a very important message. This has been, I've been fortunate in my career that a few men and women to whom I reported or were superior to me, or even my peers, who basically told me that. And it's really a big gift. And as someone who's been managing people for a while in various capacities, that's definitely the gift I try to give. I think it's very empowering, and you remember those people who made you feel that way. Yes. In a very positive light, and you continue, even if you don't work with them, have this positive relationship with them and a glow for a long, long time. So I do think that there's helping folks show up as themselves in every interactions, as opposed to teaching them how to manage the image of them in the eyes of others, mm-hmm. which is really by definition a manipulative behavior. Mm-hmm. it's just much more satisfying. It leaves this really lasting glow. And I know exactly who made me feel this way. And I will always think very positively of those people. So I agree with you as a manager. If you want to have an impact, that is definitely a way to get there. Do you feel that we've been talking a little bit about, well, a lot about unconscious bias, and first being an Asian American, and then the second kind of more specifically an Asian American woman. Do you think that had an impact on your career trajectory?
Yeah. I think when we're younger and, at the beginning of our career, I mentioned this, we have our head down, we're trying to learn our craft and master all of that. And you're kind of oblivious because, kind of that role is still beyond your reach. You're working there, you're working your way up and all of those things. And then as you get older and you kind of come up to those leadership role opportunities, if you're what you're facing is, you have awesome performance reviews, you got great work ethic, you're ambitious, and your clients give you rave reviews and all of those things, and then the one maybe negative feedback is that you're too direct, or those things that we talked about earlier, and it makes you wonder, okay, all these great things over here and then this, and is that prohibiting me from moving up and getting those other senior leadership roles? Is it that bamboo ceiling or the glass ceiling that women face? It's hard to tell, but it's very possible.
Yeah, I find that when I'm in the midst of a feedback like that, or really any hardship, it's really difficult because I think biases come in bundle, and sometimes people just have a reaction to Olga, like not Olga the woman or Olga the refugee or Olga, whatever.
Mhm.
But Olga, the person, who is, maybe a little different and maybe not for everyone. And so when you're in the midst of it, I find when you're dealing with hardships or feedback, it's actually not very useful to kind of debundle the bundle and question if it's there. It's actually kind of useful to just problem solve. But, there is an objective reality where, I think not all of us experience, maybe being a lawyer is hard, maybe being the CEO is hard for everyone, but it is harder for others for reasons they can't control. And that is a fairly well documented challenge, and it's really interesting to think about what we individually and collectively can do about it. And I don't know if you have any thoughts. We're coming kind of to the end of our presentation and this conversation, but do you have any thoughts about what each of us can do every day or often enough to make sure that we actually, go towards solution of this?
Yeah, I think we have to keep talking about it in forums like this and other places. And I think, systemically, companies and organizations, they need to recognize that it exists and do training from the top down, right? It's not like a bottom up thing where the leadership recognizes that there is unconscious bias and you have to train people about it, because most of us I was oblivious to this concept until probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. I just went about my life trying to be the best lawyer that I could be, until maybe you see things that maybe it could be that, or maybe it's not, I don't know. And then you start second guessing yourself. Until there's more conversation about it and more training, it's going to be really difficult.
Training definitely helps. As I said, in my case, I find it very helpful to have some actually objective measure.
Yes.
I find this to be helpful because then it's not, am I too harsh on me? Am I second guessing? Am I coming with a baggage? It's just a more objective conversation about. Helen, thank you for this conversation. I find this conversation very important, but very difficult.
It is. I know that when you and I first started talking, we had a different topic in mind, and it just was weighing on me. Like, no, we have to talk about this, and so thank you for being open to talking about it. It's uncomfortable. I, had anxiety about it. That's the solution. I think we have to talk about it, and people have to realize it exists. And, that's why it's called unconscious bias. They don't realize it. I don't think there's malicious intent in it, but once you kind of open people's eyes to it, that's when we're going to probably get the change.
Yeah, we experience this challenge individually, but I actually think it's a collective problem. And so I think when we reflect how difficult it is, we acknowledge that we as individuals are not well equipped to understand, articulate, or deal with it. And so when we try to talk about it, it's hard, and there's sort of mixed feelings about, is it me, is it the world, what is it? Helen, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.